Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, to another live stream. Today we're going to be doing a special video where we're sharing a case study of someone in South Africa, a South African doing all the things property related. So we've got our good-looking gentleman over here, Dean. Thanks for joining us today. He's currently on mute and will be off mute about halfway through the live stream when he shares his deals and his work. So yeah, he's going to be sharing with us how he was able to raise 100% finance on a block of flats, which is, quite an anomaly. He's going to be sharing with us two blocks that he has purchased in the last 6 months. To say that Dean is hungry and has drive and ambition is definitely an understatement. I've never seen someone with this workhorse mentality. And that's why he's gotten the results, plain and simple. You can sugarcoat it and you can say it how you want, but at the end of the day, he did the sit-ups and now he's got the six-pack. So let's jump right into it. We're talking today everything multi-let. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lawrence. I'm a cybersecurity analyst and I side hustle as a property investor. I've been in the property game for over 10 years, focusing on the low income market, and I specialize in multi-let, specifically blocks of flats. I am currently financially independent, meaning that if I were to lose my income as a cybersecurity analyst, I could live off my property income. But I don't take anything out of my property business because I believe in compounding. So everything that I make in my business gets reinvested to grow and scale and reach a critical mass. I'm also a business coach. Dean is one of my students, and he's gone through my coaching program. I'm also an author. There are two of my books. And I'm the founder of the My Property app. If you want to connect with me on socials, here are all the different places you can find me. So either take a screenshot or just copy them down. Please connect with me. I'm always happy to help, to share, to connect. There are two primary ways one can make money in property. You can make money through cash flow or through appreciation. Now, the appreciation strategy is when you start to speculate. You start to look at the future of the market 10, 15, 20 years down the line. So you buy in a nice area in the high income suburbs, something like a Bryanston or a Fourways or a Sandton in Johannesburg. If you're looking at Cape Town, it's more your Sea Point, Greenpoint. So your upper income luxurious areas, they tend to attract more appreciation. So what you do, or what most people do, is they buy, hold for 10, 15, 20 years, hope that the value of the property goes up, and that's how they make their money. The cash flow route is when you buy in the lower income market or in your student accommodation multi-let market, and where you're able to make a cash flow or a return on a month-to-month basis. So I specialize mostly in the cash flow space. I do have a few properties in the appreciation world, but mostly my focus is on cash flow. Now, when you're looking at cash flow, you've got two situations. You've got on the left-hand side cash flow positive. This is where your rental income is great enough to cover all of your expenses, and you're left with a little bit of gravy at the end of the day. So you're left with a profit, or what we call a positive cash flow. On the right-hand side, you've got a negative cash flow. This is where you buy in the suburbs or you buy a new build, and the rent doesn't cover all the expenses, so you have to use your salary or other income streams to fund the shortfall. Obviously, the focus needs to be, my coaching program is focused on teaching the principles of buying cash flow positive properties. So what is positive cash flow? It's simply when your rent is greater than your expenses, leaving you with a monthly profit. And those expenses usually include a bond or a mortgage payment. Obviously, if you're buying a property cash, it's very easy to have a cash flow positive situation. It's different when you have leverage. And what I teach is how to buy properties and in the areas where you're able to get a cash flow positive situation even with leverage. Within positive cash flow, you've got sub strategies, and one of those strategies is a multi-let. And simply put, a multi-let is when you have multiple tenants as opposed to just one tenant. So instead of having one family or one professional living in your house, you have multiple people living in your house. And this tends to have a greater cash flow positive situation than your single let, because you've got bulk, you've got multiple people paying you rent, and if you contain your expenses, you're able to get a larger amount of cash flow. Now, within the multi-let strategy, you've got also sub-strategies. You've got what I call the HMO, houses of multiple occupation. So you've got one house with maybe 5 or 6 rooms, and you've got 5 or 6 people living there separately. You've got, shared spaces, like your kitchen might be shared, but you'll have 5 or 6 professionals living under one roof. This is actually a very common strategy in the UK, less common in South Africa. You've also got your multi-apartment strategy. So this is when you have, let's say, a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment in the center of CBD Johannesburg, and it's a large enough area that you're able to put 3 or 4 different tenants, using parquet, not parquet flooring, what's that, I always forget about it, the divider, the non-permanent structure, I always forget. It'll come to me obviously after this webinar, but you put some sort of non-permanent structure in between the different rooms so that you can have multiple tenants in your single apartment. Student accommodation, a very common multi-let strategy, where instead of renting to a family or a professional, you're renting to students. Obviously you need to be in proximity of a student house. Another sub-strategy is blocks of flats. I consider this a more advanced strategy. And the reason is because banks don't like to finance these kind of properties. So here I've got a block of 6 units in the south of Johannesburg, and I'm using this for purely demonstrative purposes. I haven't actually analyzed this deal or gone into any detail. The issue that the issue why this strategy is advanced is because the banks don't really like to finance it. And if you're not able to get bank finance, your options to buying this property are limited to pretty much a cash purchase. And these buildings often go for between 1 to 2 million and upwards. It's not always feasible to find someone who has that amount of cash available. And the reason why the banks don't want to or don't like to finance these is because they don't like to finance them when they're not sectionalized. So a non-sectional building means that this unit of 6 different flats is on one title deed. So the banks will finance, but they're not going to finance at home loan terms. They're going to finance at what we call commercial terms, which are it's very unattractive for us as investors. And it tends to kill the cash flow of your deal. So imagine that you've got this building and it's making 5,000 Rand cash flow on home loan terms. As soon as you go to commercial terms, you're going to kill that cash flow. So let me show you an example. On the left here, we've got the Property 24 bond calculator. And what I've just used for demonstrative purposes is a purchase price of 1 million using 9% interest, which is prime as of today, of the day of the shooting of this video. And I've used a 20-year loan period. So those are very common home loan terms, to get prime and to get it over a 20-year period. And what you can see here is that the monthly bond repayment would be just under 9,000 Rand. So that's for a R1 million bond, you'd be paying 9,000 Rand per month. As a bond repayment. If we now use commercial terms, and you can see here I've changed the numbers to prime plus 3, which is common for commercial lending, and it's common to get a commercial term of between 5 to 10 to 15 years. Those are usually the common numbers. Now here your monthly bond repayment is now 14,347. So your effective increase in payment monthly to the bank is about 5,000. Now, if your cash flow is 5,000 and using commercial terms mean you're spending an extra 5,000, now your cash flow is 0, right? So you're not making any profit, you're not making any loss. Now, there is an argument to be made that, with commercial finance, you're paying off the building quicker. So it only takes you 10 years to pay it off. After you've paid it off, the rest of the cash flow is yours for free. So that is an argument to be made, but for me, I'm not really intending to pay off the bond. I like leverage. I like debt. With more debt, I can buy more buildings. That's the great thing of the property business, is that it's a debt business. The more debt you can get, the bigger you can scale. So this is the argument as to why I say this strategy is an advanced strategy, because it's not really feasible to get home loan terms if it's not sectionalized, because the commercial terms tend to kill the cash flow of the deal. Now, because the banks don't lend when it's a non-sectional, i.e. there's one title deed for the whole block, what you can do is you can go and sectionalize the building, right? So you can go and turn it from one title deed, which is what it's currently on, to 6 individual title deeds, one title deed per unit. This is the process of sectionalization. It requires you to have a good town planner, a good architect, and a good lawyer. These are the 3 instrumental people that will help you turn this one title deed into 6 title deed. And once you've got that, once you've got a sectionalized building, What you can then do is you can approach the banks, the ABSAs, the standard banks, the commercial banks of South Africa, and you can get home loan terms. So you can get prime lending over a 20-year period. So when the banks aren't looking to finance this building, you're left with an alternative, which is to use cash or to use private finance. This is mostly the strategy that I use. Is I use private finance. I bring partners together, and in a stokvel kind of structure, we go and buy these buildings together. But the only reason I'm able to do that now is because I've got a few years of experience and I've got a track record. So for investors starting out, it's very hard to raise private finance, and the bank's not financing you. So that's why this strategy tends to be a little bit advanced. So I explained all of this to Dean. I was very rational, and I was like, dude, this is an advanced strategy, start smaller. But he was having none of it because, like I said, he's a workhorse, he's a machine. And what he's going to share with us today is 2 buildings that he bought, one with cash and one with 100% bank finance. Now I think I've set the scene pretty aggressively that it's very hard to get finance, so I'm sure you're going to learn something from Dean today as to how he was able to get the 100% finance. But enough of me. Dean, over to you.
Thanks, Lawrence. You're very flattering saying a six-pack. You're probably the only person to use my name and six-pack in the same sentence. Thanks for that. So yeah, I'm a software engineer by trade. Been in the industry for about 12 years. I'm based in Joburg, originally a Joburg South boy, and yeah, a bit of an inexperienced investor when it originally came to property when I started out.
Awesome. Let's look at your property experience. I know you've done a couple of deals that weren't so great. Just talk us through these.
Cool. Yeah. So basically in 2020, in March, when COVID hit and it looks like the world went into absolute chaos at the time, I saw a lot of friends and family either lose jobs or unable to work, get an income. And luckily in the IT industry, I was fortunate where I still had a job and a steady income. But it kind of made me think, we all realized that something like COVID, a global pandemic, would never happen, but it did happen. So it made me wonder, if something like this happens again and it affects my job, what kind of position will I be in? I thought, if I lost my job tomorrow, where would I be? Would I still be financially sound? Would I be able to take care of my partner? And the answer was a resounding no. So I've often heard family members, uncles, my grandfather all speak about property. Get property. Property can make you money. You buy a property and then you get rental income, and then you ultimately make money. So in one fell swoop, I bought 1 bed, 1 bath in the northern suburbs. And then very quickly I'm like, okay, cool. I still have affordability. Let me scale here. Let me try build Rome in a day. So then I bought another property towards the end of 2020, which got transferred in early 2021. And now I have 2 buildings to my name. Lekker, awesome. Okay, cool. I've got 2 properties, rent. The rent came off. Then I got all the notifications for the expenses. And then I realized, okay, cool. I've got really nice, sweet tenants that pay on time every month, but it doesn't cover everything. I'm left with 3,378 Rand negative every month. And now I've got to substitute a small portion, but a portion of my salary towards this. And it now impacts my affordability. So I did a bit of maths and I was like, okay, 3,378, it's a little bit, but can't be that bad. But I realized if I never escalate the rent, or unable to ever escalate the rent, worst case scenario, that's 810,000 Rand after 20 years, 240 months, which is scary when you put it in that perspective. Not to mention, there's a lot of speculation, right? Can you get the escalation in rent, and can the physical property actually capitally appreciate? So that was a bit of a concern. So funny enough, I've always been interested in investing and in the stock market, just in general. I've always had a fascination in finances. So I watch quite a few YouTubers. So I watch a lot of the American kind of property real estate investors, Bigger Pockets, meet Kevin, until we got into the crypto stuff. And it was all great, but the problem with these guys is there were two major problems. One, they're showing their deals based on 1 or 2% interest rate on home loans, which is something we can only dream about in this country. And secondly, like people they would be very like they'd talk for 9 minutes and then not give actual information. And but they'd end on pay this much or join my Patreon and you'll get X, Y, and Z. And then, funny enough, like through bigger pockets in the magical world of the algorithm of YouTube, the South African guy popped up, Lawrence, and it said cash flow, something like cash flow positive deals in the south of Joburg. Now, I come from the south of Joburg, and I was like, no way, this man's nuts. He must be selling snake oil to everyone. So I thought, let me just watch this, but I wanted to watch it for a laugh. So I started watching it, going into it, and I was shocked. The guy gave away what other investors call secrets as common knowledge. He just generally wanted to give all the information away to help people. And there was no catchphrase at the end. There was no tag, pay me in 5 Bitcoin right now, or transfer to get phase 1 of the course. He gave a lot of that information right then and there. So I realized two things. I was like, okay, this guy's clearly transparent. He's not here to make a quick buck. He's here to actually help people. Yes, he makes money through his business, but ultimately it's to help people. And two, here's a guy who's based in Cape Town, succeeding in my hometown. Surely I can do this. I know the area well. I know the roads. I know the people. This is an opportunity. So yeah, and then we met up, Lawrence.
Amazing. And never look back. It's been what, 8 months, 9 months since we know each other?
8 months. And a lot has happened in those 8 months. It feels like longer, yeah.
Well, let's jump into what's happened in the last couple of months. Right, here's your first block of flats. How did you find this one? How did you negotiate a cheeky discount of 21%?
Yeah, so firstly, like the best place to look is obvious. Like look on private property 24. After discussing with Lawrence like the general approach of the type of properties we need to look for, it was putting in that criteria, setting alerts, and continually viewing properties that meet that criteria. And then I went on I was like, okay, cool. My alerts came up. This is easy. There's a set of properties. Now I just have to sign an OTP and I've got the property. No, it doesn't work like that. So truth be told, I must have signed I looked at about 72 properties and I signed about 30 OTPs. And I was like, I was about to give up. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm following all the methods. These are the right properties. This is the right price. I said to Lawrence, there's no way these guys will accept a discount. I won't find a motivated seller. So I thought, okay, what am I missing here? So how is an estate agent motivated? Estate agent is motivated to get the best price for the seller and get the maximum commission. Okay, cool. Can't change that. But how can I flip it? How can I have the estate agent on my side? So basically, simply, obviously through a few techniques in that and dealing in the corporate world, focusing on building a strong relationship with a guy and finding commonality with the estate agent. To try to have him see things from my perspective and sell this to the seller. Because at the end of the day, I'm not the salesman. He's the salesman to the seller to get the seller to buy. And we had a huge commonality on both growing up in the South, which is my benefit why I chose the South, and that we both come from Greek descent. So that was my commonality. That was my way in to build a proper relationship to get him motivated. And having conversations with the seller, and the seller was slightly motivated in the sense he was a bit sick, but he didn't want to go this low. And yeah, luckily the estate agent actually motivated and pushed it. And that's where this opportunity came through.
So a combination of building a strong relationship with the broker who's putting this deal together, and probably being at the right time with a slightly motivated seller, a bit old. But like a lot of these buildings I've noticed are owned by older people. They've been owned for 30 years and they eventually just want to retire. It's a nice stage to be in. Let's look at some of the photos on the inside. We've got a sense of what it looks outside. Let's see on the inside. What were some of the things that stood out for you when you were looking at this deal?
Yeah, so the big thing, like you always talk about, that you need to always budget for repairs because you're obviously dealing in the lower income segment and you're dealing with older buildings, a bit dilapidated to get your right price, right? Your asking price. So, sorry, your offer price. But when I looked at this building and I went through each unit, I was like, okay, this is actually in very good condition. So firstly, like at the end of the day, it's how much risk you're willing to tolerate. Some people can walk into a building and see value where the whole thing's dilapidated, but they know they've got the right contractors, they know how much it'll cost to repair it, that they'll take a risk like that. Someone like me, where this is my first deal, I was like, okay, this, for being more low risk and inexperienced, the place is in great condition, just needs minor touch-ups. Cool, it's on the low risk side. The second thing is zero delinquency. Now, typically in that kind of area, or any low income area, you will get a higher rate of delinquency. But all these tenants had 12 months, I had 12 months of rent roll, and they had never missed a payment, ever, which is rare, it's unheard of. So again, mitigating my risk. I wanted a fully let property where some people will say a full empty property is better for them so they can find tenants. To me, that's too risky because now I've got to fund the shortfall of that entire building until I find tenants. So this a lot of it just matched my kind of risk tolerance, which I liked. The low delinquency, the good paying tenants, and the great condition of the building. Not to mention the final thing, this is a they're 3-bed units, which means they're the maximum size units you can get in the south of Joburg. So that means I've got the maximum potential in rental income, which is a big one. That's a really big one. Yeah.
You make an interesting point there, Dean, when you say that there's the benefit for you was that it was fully tenanted, and I completely agree with you. I think there's pros and cons to both strategies. If it's fully let, the benefit is that you get cash flow from day one. You don't have to worry about marketing or placing tenants, which is obviously coming at a cost. But I think the drawback or the downside of buying fully tenanted is you tend to inherit whatever the previous tenant or the previous landlord had placed. And then on the other side, the completely empty building has the pro that you get to place tenants of the quality that you want and you can vet them. But on the downside, you have to probably fund the shortfall or fund the OPEX costs for a couple of months. And the important thing that I want the listeners to take out of this is that this is a very personal journey. You've got to understand what is your risk appetite, what area you like, what strategy you like. I mean, there's so many different options of what you can do, and each decision has a pro and a con and a risk element to it. And understanding what your risk appetite is a very important element.
Yeah, correct. And I think something also to note, the risk when you've got a tenantless building is, even if each unit's in good condition, you still have to do maintenance before you get a tenant in. So that's an extra cost that you kind of have to factor.
Let's jump into the numbers.
Cool. Yeah. So this deal was a cash deal. Basically, how this came about. Obviously, you heard Lawrence's slide earlier around these kind of buildings where it's multi-lets with multiple flats in the south. Is kind of it's regarded as a commercial building, right? So you can only get a commercial loan of 10 years at an interest rate of 3% above prime. Now, the price I paid and the typical discount when you get the right building in these kind of areas most of the time doesn't really work out on a commercial loan. So I had a paid off home loan. I'm fortunate enough where I've been quite diligent with my money where I paid off my house. But then I was like, okay, cool. I paid off my house. I was considering getting the commercial loan on this property, even though the returns weren't going to be as great as they were. But then I thought, no, but now I've got a paid off property, my own personal home, and that money is sitting in the bond that the bank is using to lend to other people at higher interest rates, and they're skimming off the top and scoring. I'm like, no, that's not on with me. And on top of that, inflation is 6 to 8% every year. So the money that I've put in to pay off the bond, every year, not only is it being loaned out, but I'm losing the value on that money. And yes, one can say that the property appreciates, but that's speculation. An area can go up or down. So I said, okay, cool. I want to make a return on this money. I've got this cash. I want a return. I don't want it to depreciate. So it's like, okay, let me do a cash deal, yeah. If I can get higher than interest rates I was paying, I'm scoring. At the end of the day, I'm making money. I'm scoring.
Amazing. Sorry, amazing. That finance strategy that you just mentioned is what we call we call it a refinance or an equity release. You've got some sort of property paid off asset that you can go back to the bank and say, loan me money on this asset. I think that's a great way to finance. And the thing is, guys, you don't have to have a property paid off to do that strategy. You can use somebody else's paid off property to do that. You can get into a partnership and release the equity of a family, of a friend, of a colleague, of a group of colleagues, of a Stokvel kind of situation. And also to that point, the strategy that I think Dean's going to do on this one, and I hope that he does this, is now that he's got the asset, he can now go through the process of sectional titling it, getting it to a position where the banks will home loan to him, and then he goes and refinances, and he gets a home loan on all 4 of these units, and then what does he do? He goes and buys another building. And all he's going to do is recycle the capital to make further purchases and to scale his portfolio.
Exactly, and let's just say for argument's sake, this property was 100,000 Rand, and I sectionalize it, and I tap into the equity because it's cash, right? There is also that little cherry on top, that speculation that could be worth 200,000 once I repair.
Well, so not only is, you bought it at a discount. If you bought it at a discount to market value, by the time the banks value it, hopefully they value it at the market value that, let's say 1.5 or whatever the market value is, and you bought it for 1.3. If they value it at 1.5, you bought 200,000 Rand worth of equity.
Exactly.
Straight off the purchase, your 21% discount is equity you've bought.
Exactly, and that's why the price is so important. And just in case people are thinking, because there are people out there, and I had to have a mindset shift where you have to be okay with debt. Everything had to be paid off. But for those who are like me, who think like that, there's a key thing. It's like, okay, but then, cool, you had a paid off property, you had that excess money every month that's no longer going to your bond. Why wouldn't you keep that? So the thing I would say to you is, yes, I've now got to pay a bond again, but if I wanted to, it gives me options. I can use this property, that cash flow, to pay my bond and have extra money left over and above the bond payment. So even if I wanted to do that, I've actually still ended up in a better position than I had before.
100%. So guys, this is a cash on cash return. 12% is the cash on cash return. That is the cash flow times 12 divided by his acquisition costs. This doesn't take into account capital appreciation. This doesn't take into account rental escalation. So next year when he escalates his rent by 7% or 8%, this is just year one's return. So this is his minimum return year one. It's just going to escalate from here. Dean, before we go on to your next deal, which I think is the even more exciting deal, I just want to remind everybody that you can post questions, put it in the comments section. I do see here that Butamelo said the word that I was looking for was partitioning, so thanks for that. And then Gerswin said, isn't flipping another way to make money? So that's 100% accurate. If you're going the appreciation route, you can buy at a discount, force the value of the property by renovating it or adding some sort of value, and then selling at a markup. That's a great capital raising strategy, but like we said, we're focusing on the cash flow positive. So over to you, Dean, the second deal. Tell us a little bit more about this one.
Yeah, so this is that old adage you always hear in adverts: buy one, get one free. And we all think it's a complete scam, or so did I. So this is actually a property of the same owner as the property we just spoke about now. So he was actually, I found out through the estate agent, again, having a very good relationship with him, that he wants to offload all his properties. He actually had, at the time, quite a good offer, almost to what he was asking. But because I had such a good relationship with the estate agent, he said, no, I trust you, you're a genuine guy, let's rather go with you. So I was like, okay, send through the numbers, send through the details about the property. And I was like, oh, geez, okay. So I'm looking for 3-bed units, which is hard in the south and rare, and it's maximum income. Yeah, I'm like, okay, these are 3-bed units, 4 of them, they're duplexes, they're 140 meters square. Okay, I'm interested if the numbers work out. So I look at the numbers. While I'm looking at the numbers when I get all the information, I say to the estate agent, why is there 4 COJ statements and title deeds? And I'm like, oh, this is sectionalized. So exactly what Lawrence has said. It's like something that's incredibly rare in these kind of areas and older buildings is that it's not sectionalized. And we know if you have a sectionalized property, you can get residential finance, 20-year loan, and prime or prime minus. So I'm like, okay, this is a good opportunity here. This is I can skip the middleman, and I don't have to have lawyers' fees, town planner, sectionalized. We onto something here. So I actually said, but I was swamped with the first property at the time because obviously it's my first big property. The previous property, I was like, I spotted a deal, but you know what? I'm going to give a super low offer. Screw it. I'm just going to go. I don't need it. I don't want it right now. I've got other things. I give a super low offer. And guess what? He accepted.
38% discount. So just having a good relationship, building rapport with an agent, doing the bulk purchase with the slightly motivated seller, and you've got now just pure gravy.
Correct.
Let's have a look at the inside of the building. Tell us what you saw here.
Yeah, so again, big thing, I'm a low risk person. Like, I want a good condition. When I say good condition, obviously this is immaculate. This was stunning when I saw it. But I don't want structural issues. I don't want major piping issues. I don't want huge damp issues. Even though they're old buildings, I still have standards to my risk tolerance. But when I walked into this property after the deal, and I was like, oh my God, this just gets better and better. I know I sound like a complete salesman right now, but you can see the pictures, like it's stunning. Good tenants, take care of their stuff. Immediately when I saw how clean it was, I saw great condition. I saw that the tenant takes pride in the place, which immediately will tell me they're good payers and they're decent people. The rent rolls, obviously I looked at the rent rolls, consistent. I did have one delinquent tenant in one of the units, but again, mitigating my risk, knowing the property sectionalized, knowing I got a huge discount, knowing it's in great condition and the rest of the tenants are good, and I can get potentially the maximum rent. I was like, okay, I can take one delinquent tenant.
So was there a delinquent tenant when you looked at the rent rolls? There was somebody that wasn't quite paying to standard.
They were in arrears by quite a lot. But again, like Lawrence has also said in past videos, and I'm sure you'll mention again, is that the clauses in your OTP are critical to the deal. And one of the clauses I put in was for the seller, on acceptance of the deal, the seller must remove or evict that unit 2 tenant. So again, that's also another way to mitigate your risk, is if the seller will agree to running with a few of the items, like something like that.
And alternatively, you just go through the eviction process yourself, right? I mean, it's not an impossible process to follow. And unfortunately, guys, when you go the lower income market, your risk of delinquent behavior is higher. If you are uncomfortable with that, then you need to look at another strategy, but also then reduce your expectation on yield, because yield and risk tend to follow each other. So the higher risk deals have higher yield versus, buying in Fourways or Midrand or in your Sandton market. You're probably going to have good tenants that don't ever get delinquent, but you're also not going to ever have rent great enough to cover your expenses. Let's have a look at the numbers on this one, Dean. So you've got in the 100% finance, which makes sense that you've got the bond repayment here. But explain to us what this infinite word here means.
Yeah, so I can promise you this, it's not a error or issue with PowerPoint where it can't format a strange value into rands. That is in fact the deal. So basically, like I said, this property, it's sectionalized, which means I can apply for bank finance. Because the previous because I've got quite a good affordability and the previous property could cover my cash flow negative properties and my bond of my personal property, it meant that my affordability hadn't been touched. I was the same as I was before, if not better, increased by the...
Sorry to interrupt you there, Dean, but I think that's a really important comment to make is most people can't scale a portfolio because they buy 3 to 5 negative cash flow properties. It affects their affordability, and then they go to the bank and the bank says no more loans, and people think, okay, well then that's my max. By focusing on positive cash flow, what you're doing is instead of eroding your affordability, you're growing it, you're improving it. So if you keep going down this road, Dean, eventually you're going to have hundreds of blocks under your name, and the bank's not going to worry about affordability because every block you purchase increases your affordability.
Correct. So in light of that, the bank saw, and I'm not even joking, like apart from my own personal bank that I bank with, every other bank didn't even worry that I have 3 properties. They didn't even look at that for my affordability. They literally looked at my income. I was like, yeah, geez, you can afford. Like this is, you only have a personal home to your name because it wasn't touching affordability and it was in a company, and I didn't have to push my income into that company to fund it. So they gave me 100% finance, 100% finance.
What terms did you get?
Sorry?
What terms did you get for that finance?
Yeah, so I got obviously over 20 years, 100% finance and 1% below par. So yeah. So, and then, but it gets sweeter. So obviously, I got 100% finance. I know the rent will cover the bond and have excess cash flow over. But obviously, when you purchase a property, you have to pay for transfer costs, sometimes repairs, and that obviously it's the amount of money you invest into the asset, and based on the rental income and cash flow, that is then your return on your investment. Now, because I had, as we spoke earlier, I've got a cash flow positive property in the previous examples. For quite a few months, I literally just used that cash flow for the lawyer's fees and transfer costs. So I literally applied for finance at the bank. They gave me 100% finance. Tenants are paying off the property and giving me some cream, and I put no money in the deal. So I literally got this property for free, and it's listed under my company.
Okay, so you using the cash flows from the first deal that we saw, you saved up for all the upfront costs that this deal required. So your bond registration, your transfer costs, and any renovations. So effectively, the profits of your first deal gave you the upfront costs so that you had to take nothing out of your salary, nothing out of your bank account in terms of new capital to buy this one. And now you've got 2 assets that are generating positive cash flow so that you can build up your next lump sum to buy your next building, again, using exclusively other people's money.
Correct. And because I bought both these properties at a discount, if I want to scale to even bigger building, I've got, if they're fairly valued, I've got that extra equity as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is not even talking, yeah, I mean, you bought at a discount, so you'll refinance at a higher rate. And you've been doing this for 8 months, bro. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, so that's the 2 deals in a nutshell.
Okay, share with us some of your lessons learned over your short stint as being a property investor.
Cool. Yeah, like something we don't value enough in business, and like I've spoken mostly on this call, relationships. Relationships are the most important thing. As you see, the relationship with the estate agent was the key in this situation. Finding commonality with these kind of people. The same goes for when you actually get the deal and you own the property. Have a good relationship with your property management agent, because they're the people that's looking after your property day to day. This is a bit of a controversial one. It depends on the landlord, but have a relationship with your tenants, because they're going to be more understanding and they're going to be held more accountable if they feel they're letting you down and there's a good solid relationship. It is a passive income, but you must have some kind of relationship with your tenants. It's heavily important, because you also hear little things. So little things like there's a leaking tap which can affect your COJ. There's an issue with electricity plugs that's affecting their TV, and it's very cheap to replace a plug for a unit. But it's easier then to have the discussion of rental escalations a year down the line because you've been attentive. You've sorted out these cheap tasks that add huge value to the tenant in the unit. Then there's due diligence. Due diligence is the numbers. Don't skim on that. Check the rent roll. Check the COJ statement. Understand your numbers, but also see patterns in your numbers. You may see great rent every month, and when you do your numbers, the return is great. But if you see for 6 months you've got 40,000 K arrears per tenant, you got to be like, is this something is this meeting my risk tolerance? Or factor in the amount of money it will cost to evict all those tenants. So it's not just about, does the deal work exactly with the number? You do have to start seeing patterns. And there is a little hint of intuition and feel. I also say, this is also going to be a little controversial. If you see the first deal that you like, 9 times out of 10, hold yourself back to not take it. Get a feel, get a sense of what kind of risk you want to take and if this is something you really want to do. Because it's 20 years, right? You've got to know you've made a good call. Then patience. Good deals come with patience. I told you, I looked at 72 deals. I think I messaged Lawrence the one day and I said, no way, this is rubbish. There's no way I'm going to get a discount. There's no way I'm going to find a decent building that I would even live in. There's just no way. And then I took time, I thought about it. I said, no, I'm not going to rush and just get another deal, which was quite a bad deal, and I'm lucky I turned it down in hindsight, because I was patient. And you've got to think through again, okay, what am I doing wrong? Where can I improve? You always have to do the self-introspection because the opportunities are out there. Then, actually, before you even start with this, it probably should actually be item number 1, or it should be flashing on the screen. Personal finance. If you cannot manage your own finance, how can you manage a property business? How can you manage cash flows? How can you even be granted the beautiful right of affordability to purchase properties if you can't manage your personal?
That's massive, because this is a debt business, guys. If you cannot get leverage or debt, then property is not a good investment class. Then rather go stocks, go Bitcoin, go something else. Property is only attractive because you can use other people's money and you can use leverage. And then I know, Dean, you've got 2 really powerful lessons here. Can you explain these a little bit more in detail?
Yeah, cool. So some cool sayings that I watched from another YouTuber, which I just really love the saying is, price is what you pay, value is what you get. So you see those properties are valuable, they're great deals, they give great returns. But had I paid full price for both of them, at the current rental income and everything, my return would have been negative, and they both would have been horrible deals that Lawrence or whoever would never go for. But that's the power of the lower income segment, is you have wiggle room, you've got opportunity to bargain because you are taking on more risk. Like Lawrence says, the more risk, the higher return. The key is to mitigate it. Also to create that margin of safety. When you have low income, where you can have tenants that can be delinquent, you know they're older buildings, so there's more repair work. So the lower the price must factor with your margin of safety. And then the second one, your property is the present value of all future cash flows. What that means is, yeah, sure, you might get rental escalations in the future. The property might appreciate, but might is a big word. Might is speculation. As an investor, you should never, ever speculate. It should be based on numbers and facts as it is today. And as it stands today, with current rent, current expenses, I get a good return. Anything that comes over and above that over the next 5-10 years is a bonus. But worst case scenario, this is my return. That's the key.
Dean, geez, bro, you're an inspiration, man. 6-8 months into this game, and you bought 2 blocks, and I don't see any signs of you slowing down. I think to the other investors wanting to get into the South, hurry up, because you're going to have some stiff competition from this guy. Couple of comments that have come through. So Butaki has said, this is encouraging, Dean. It's unbelievable that this has happened in 6 months. You can be super proud. Here's an interesting question. What has been your biggest challenge since starting this business 8 months ago?
Honestly, the biggest challenge is understanding how much it costs for repairs and renovations, like getting an understanding, and that you only get with experience as you get stuck in, as you start repairing things. That's one element of it. It seems all my points are one or two things, but the second element of it is power team, power team, power team, power team. So knowing the right contractors for the right work. That's the biggest thing, is that you're going to have repairs. Those are kind of the hidden things as you learn, you go along. You also realize, okay, these are the best plumbers, these are the best electricians, these guys are the best at that. Even like you said, with the whole sectionalizing, knowing the right town planner, knowing the right lawyers to utilize, and again, building relationships with them so you get better deals, you get better discounts. That's probably been the best learning experience that I've had doing the work. Like, that's saying no one can tell you. You have to experience it. You have to go on the journey with it. And you gain more confidence. Like, as you learn and you, like, Lawrence knows, when we were looking at a building and I was doing an OTP, I was shaking like I had Parkinson's. Like, I was like, no, I spoke a big game, but I'm like, no, Lawrence, like, I can't do this. Like, this is going to set me back 10 years in my life, or like, I don't know. And once I pulled the trigger on the right deal after a while, and the second one, I didn't even, like, I followed my due diligence. It was like this. It was easy. I slept like a baby.
What's that saying? Is it something like action breeds confidence? Something like that. I can't remember the exact saying, but that's 100% right. The first few OTPs I also signed was some of the scariest moments, and that's the power of the coach. I'm not trying to just sell my coaching program here. I mean, there's lots of good coaches out there. You must go and find the right person for you, but get somebody who's confident in their business, because their confidence will then help you in your first few times taking action until you've built up your own confidence. Another comment here from Kali says, great points, Dean. Thanks for all the advice. Another question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? That sounds like an interview question. But in your property business, Dean, where do you see yourself? Where do you see this taking you in 5 years' time?
So, first of all, it's whether you early on in the journey or much further down the road, like Lawrence, always have goals. You always need goals to work towards something. Else, you'll never get there. It's something, and even if you don't get there, you'll get pretty damn close because you've worked towards something. So that's my first thing. So I've got set goals. Lawrence knows I'm actually a very conservative guy. So my goals are actually going to bore you a bit. Like, my goals in the next 5 years is just to be able to cover all my expenses with the property business. That's it. Because if I do any better than that, well, again, it's a cherry on top. I'm happy. In 10 years, I want to be in the situation where if I want to not do my job, I have the freedom to do whatever I want. I work because I want to, not because I need to. I do love what I do. I am fortunate enough where I love what I do. But it's nice to know you've got backups. It's nice that you're in control of your financial destiny. That's what's important.
And then 12 months ago, was that ever something that you'd thought was possible?
No. 12 months ago, 12 months ago, it was like, okay, cool, I've got to buy a flat every 7 years. I can do this. By 90, I should be able to have these properties pay off my main residence, or at least cover that.
Yeah.
And when I met you, it was like, I think in our first chat before we spoke about the multi-let was, okay, I've just got to get one buy-to-let flat. That's the target for this year. Cool. And then I set the target, and then Lawrence and I spoke. I liked the challenge. He said, okay, Dean, maybe you can do one multi-let if you're lucky this year, maybe one. And I love it. I love challenges. And that was my target. It was still my target. It's always good to have targets, which you must, but don't think in 5 years I'm going to drive a Lamborghini and I'm going to have a mansion in Clifton. That is also just for a reality check for everyone. Look, if you get there, amazing. Please, I want to know your secret. But be realistic with your goals and be conservative, and you'll actually surprise yourself and you'll exceed your own goals.
100%. There is a question here from Reno. But it's quite a complicated question about vacant stands and developments. Raina, I'll send you a link to my website. You can book a 15-minute consult with me. The question that you've posed is quite complicated, so I think we'll need to just sit down and chat a bit about that. So unfortunately, I'm not going to answer it now, but thanks for posing the question. Otherwise, there's just lots of comments here about the motivation that you are sharing and how powerful your speech has been. So Dean, thank you. Thank you for agreeing to join my program and for paying me my fee, which I know was quite hectic. But for trusting me and for doing the homework, man, for doing all the work. You know, you've shared a lot of appreciation for my help in your journey, but at the end of the day, you took all the steps and you did all the action. So all the praise should be shared with you. I think in closing, do you want to give us one, last bit of advice, your golden nuggets, and then we'll close off.
So I'll just start by saying, like, thank you, Lawrence. Like, thank you for all this. Like, I don't even think it's possible. Like, I'm a person who's a pessimist and very skeptical about everything what people want to sell. But I think what sets Lawrence apart is that we set up the call. Yes, I did have affiliation. There was something about him that I didn't like because he was so open and transparent in his videos. But when we had that call, you must know, I grilled him with like 30 difficult questions. He didn't shy away from them. He didn't get upset. He didn't say, yeah, but you can find out in my course. And he actually gave a lot away, which I don't think he realized at the time. But he actually gave most of the source in it. But he answered all the questions. And he was really, like, the way I speak, the way he was passionate about it. It wasn't just to get money from people, just to do this, to tick off the list. Like, he genuinely cares. And being able to, once you're in and he can see that you're motivated and you're willing to put in the hard work and get the proverbial six-pack, which I'm still trying to get physically, he will respond to your messages. He will answer your questions, as long as your attitude's there. But then on final thoughts from my side, because we all know I can talk all night, Lawrence, is that, guys, honest to God, like, anything is possible. As long as you have the knowledge, the skills, the health, and the right people guiding you, you make relationships with the right successful people, anyone can do well. This is not rocket science, but you have to be motivated. You have to want something better for your life. And you have to follow the right people.
Dean,
and good luck.
It's been a plum pleasing pleasure. Thanks so much, dude. For all of you that joined tonight, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe. Put comments in the section below if you want me to create certain types of content, or if you want me to do a different piece of video. Let me know. Otherwise, I will respond. Thanks again for joining, and big thanks to Dean. You've been a guiding light for us. Cheers.